How is everyone doing today? And in this video, we are going to be talking about every stat in Zenless Zone Zero. What do they do? How do they work? What's an in-game example for it? And I will be explaining all of this in this video. Before we get into all that, make sure you leave a like, comment, sub, all that different type of stuff. And let me know what you are most excited for when it comes to Zenless Zone Zero, whether it be the characters, the designs, the combat, any of that type of stuff. I would love to know in the comments below. And not only that, we also have a stream announcement for Zenless Zone Zero that is going to be coming out next week on the 28th, which is super exciting. Funny enough, it's on Wuthering Waves release as well. But that's besides the point. I cannot wait to cover it. Make sure you leave a sub if you are ready for that as well. But going into the next few stats that we're going to talk about that are pretty much common in most of our REHOO games, and it's the first 5 that we will be talking about. Really quick to explain, because if you've already played these REHOO games, you gotta know how it works. If you haven't, well, I'll give a brief explanation on how it works because they are pretty simple. For the first 3 that we're going to be talking about are basically in every single game known to man: HP, attack, and defense. HP is of course the health that you have for your character. Attack is going to be the number that you're going to be basing most of your damage on, and then also defense is going to be the reduced amount of damage that you'll be taking before it hits your HP. Pretty simple to explain the stats right there. And then the next 2 that are pretty common in most REHOO games as well is going to be crit rate and crit damage. Now, crit rate is of course going to be the chance that you hit your crit damage multiplier, and the crit rate is going to be, of course, if you have a 50% chance to crit, either you're going to crit 50% or you're going to not crit for 50%. If it gets a little bit higher, let's say 70%, then you have a 70% chance of hitting that crit and a 30% chance of not hitting that crit. Now, depending on how the character is, especially with how fast they hit, you can get a pseudo bigger crit rate, if you want to say that, just because there's so many times that you're going to attack, there's more likely than not that you're going to end up hitting more crits than not if you have so many hits inside of your, I could say, string or any of your skills. It really plays weirdly into how that works. And then the crit damage, of course, is going to be the multiplier that you'll be basing your damage off of, which is if you have 100% crit damage, you're going to be multiplying your damage by 2, basically like that when it comes to being able to use your crit rate and your crit damage. I might have that, I guess you could say, mathematically incorrect possibly, but that's basically how it goes. HP is health, attack is where your damage comes from, defense is how much damage you're taking in, reduced before it hits your HP, crit rate is the chance of hitting a crit, crit damage is multiplying your damage to that crit damage amount. Now, going into the actual Zenless Zone Zero stats, the stuff that isn't in any other game for REHOO-verse related games, is going to be the first one, which is going to be impact. Now, impact is going to be kind of important because there are certain characters in the game that do pretty much play into this stat by itself, and impact is going to be increasing the amount of the days meter that you'll be building up upon hitting their attacks. Someone that actually does well when it comes to their days is going to be someone like Coleta and someone like Lycan. These 2 play very heavily into the days meter buildup, which is very important in Zenless Zone Zero. And having your days meter filled up means that A, they're going to be stunned, and B, you're going to be able to trigger the chain attacks, which not only do a lot of damage, being able to switch in your characters in and out in your team, but also allowing you to restock your parry gauge, which is a very important aspect to the game, even though they give us quite a bit of charges. Once you hit the higher levels of Shiyu defense, which is the MOC or the Spiral Abyss of Zenless Zone Zero, there's going to be a lot of enemies that multi-hit, and you're going to have to waste all your parries on those multi-hits. And once you run out of that gauge and you don't have a chain attack ready, then you're going to be losing the chance to be able to parry and counter attack, and you're going to have to work with running away and dodging instead of giving them free damage that you would have been able to do if you parry that move. So impact is actually going to be a very important stat for certain characters that really want to make it so that you're abusing the days mechanic that these enemies have on their health bars or underneath it, depending on how they change the UI when live release happens. The next one is going to be Anomaly Mastery. Now, Anomaly Mastery is going to be how quickly the anomaly buildup accumulates. Now, anomaly buildup is going to be what I talked about in my first video, where I talked about the reactions that are in the game. How fast can you make these reactions proc? And there's a bunch of different ways where you can do this. You can have a full-on electric reaction, full-on fire, full-on physical, and then a mix of any of the elements in the game. Now, depending on how high your Anomaly Mastery is how fast you're going to be able to build up that meter and then be able to proc those reactions. When it comes to fighting against certain enemies, like let's say robots, having Anomaly Mastery on one character, being able to build up a lot of electricity, makes it easier for them to stun, because when those enemies are stunned with electricity, specifically to robots, they get stunned for a very long time. Same thing with fire with humans, and corruption with the aether units, or the units that have like the ball energy sphere on them. There's a bunch of different reactions in this game, and being able to increase this by a great amount, especially on characters that do it really quickly, something like Corin, something like Grace. There's a lot of really good characters in the game that are able to abuse this stat, and you can see already from not only talking about the days meter with, let's say, Coleta and Lycan, and something with Anomaly Mastery with something like Grace and possibly Rena. These are going to be some absolutely cool builds that we're going to be able to use on these characters that diversify the use case and the roles that are going to be in the game when it comes to the units we are going to use on our team. The next one is going to be Anomaly Proficiency, and it's going to be increasing the damage of the attribute Anomaly. So let's say, for example, you are using Grace. Grace has already done a shock reaction onto the enemy, which is what we talked about with Anomaly Mastery, being able to build that up really quickly. Anomaly Proficiency is going to allow you to not only make that reaction hurt harder, but also the subsequent matching element damage. So whenever you shock, now whenever you have Anomaly Proficiency on, you're going to be doing more damage while that enemy is shocked, and you're also going to be able to do a nasty amount of damage as well when they eventually do get shocked, which is a really cool thing to see. And we're going to see a bunch of different characters being able to abuse not only Anomaly Mastery, but also Anomaly Proficiency. It's kind of the way if you see it like Genshin Impact, where you have Elemental Mastery and Energy Recharge. They kind of go hand in hand because you want to spam the both. So having these two on one character is going to be absolutely nasty to be able to not only accumulate the Anomaly buildup, let's say like Shock, Burn, Corruption, Assault, all these different reactions, and then having the Proficiency to do more damage once they've already been dealt with those reactions, which is a really nice thing to look at. And I cannot wait to see all that we're going to look at in Zenless when it comes to the team comps with mixing and matching elements, and also with all of the mono teams we're going to see as well when it comes to freezing, burning, shocking, assault, corruption. There's going to be so many cool things to look at when this game ends up growing as time goes by. The next one is going to be penetration. Now, funny enough, penetration is actually going to be a very important stat in this game, and there's a reason why. And especially for all you meta heads out there, this is going to sound very strong as a stat, because penetration is going to allow you to ignore a certain amount of defense based on the penetration stat. That's absolutely nasty. I'm not gonna lie to you. Having a stat that immediately gives you defense reduce, or I guess you say ignoring the defense on the enemy, is a pretty strong stat. And that even goes on to our next stat, which is pen ratio, or penetration ratio. And that's going to be ignore a percentage of defense. So the more you have this on a DPS, the even nastier those characters are going to get. So not only are we going to be looking for crit rate, crit damage on the DPS, but penetration looks like it's going to be absolutely nasty for a lot of different DPS in the game, because being able to ignore a certain amount of defense and a percentage at that, that's going to be absolutely astronomical when it comes to the difference between having no penetration ratio and having a character with a good amount of it. That's a big difference, to ignore a certain amount of defense innately, usually something locked behind characters' kits that we usually see in supports later on in the game. So it looks like penetration is just going to be the flat or static number of penetration you're going to have on the defense, and then the pen ratio is going to be a little bit more substantial, hold up a little bit more in value when it comes to that as a stat versus the regular penetration. So just think of regular penetration as a regular static number, and then pen ratio is going to be the percentage of the defense you're going to be taking out. So this is actually very interesting to see. Not only do we have Days, who is going to allow us to help with the days meter, or impact I mean, and then we have Anomaly Mastery and Anomaly Proficiency with that type of build where you're building it up quick and you're doing a lot more damage with it. And now we have penetration and pen ratio, which is like something that's going to be very important on DPS as well. So this looks absolutely insane. And then going into the very last unique stat that we have in the game that I know so far, hopefully I got all the brand new stats in Zenless Zone Zero, which is going to be energy regen, which we've seen in a couple of these games, and it's going to act a little bit differently, because in Zenless Zone Zero, energy regen isn't going to be towards the ultimates. The ultimates use decibels, which is based on the combos that you're doing and also the dodging and the parrying that you're doing in the game. Energy regen in this game is going to allow you to skill more often, and being able to skill more often not only allows you to build up your ultimate very quickly, but they also have a lot of really unique, I guess you could say, attacks, and also being able to give you a lot more in-game as well. When it comes to something like Lycan's Days, that skill is going to be really great on them. When it comes to something like Ellen's skill, you're going to be able to do a lot of AoE ice damage that's going to do a lot more damage than something that you would have done without having your skill. A lot of characters have a regular skill and then they have the EX skill, and the EX skill is going to be a lot more when it comes to the damage that it does, and also probably even more unique capabilities that skill has versus the regular skill. So energy regen is going to be very important on a bunch of different characters, and I can see a lot of different characters using a bunch of different stats in mix. Having crit rate, having crit damage, having impact, energy regen, that's something that, oh, and penetration, pen ratio, something that DPSs might want to look at. And the same thing for other units like Grace, who's going to want Anomaly Mastery and Anomaly Proficiency to be able to abuse the amount of buildup that she has with her AoE lightning. There's just so much in the game right now that you're going to be able to take account for when building a character, and there's going to be so many cool builds, so many cool teams that we're going to see with the amount of stats that we have and the builds that we can work towards, which a lot of the relic sets do help you out in building out these stats in full while dropping off, of course, the regular stats that are in the relics itself. So other than that, that's going to be it for this video when it comes to every stat explained in Zenless Zone Zero. I'm super excited for the game 100%, and I cannot wait to see what stats are going to be dropping or what builds we're going to be seeing when it comes to the live release of the game. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Always end the video. See y'all guys in the next one, and peace.